My name is Claire. I am 33 years old. And the day my family came back into my life, I was standing in my own office. My name on the door. My team inside. My life spilled entirely without them. They had been gone for 4 years. Not gone like distance. Gone like silence. Gone like, we don't call, we don't visit, we don't ask. And then my story appeared in a local magazine. A feature about young professionals building something real. My photo. My name. My success. And within 2 weeks, they were back. Calling. Texting. Showing up. As if 4 years had not passed. As if nothing had happened. That is where this story ends. But to understand how I got there, we need to go back. 6 years back. Growing up, I was the middle child. Not the oldest, who got the responsibility. Not the youngest, who got the softness. The middle. Which meant I got the expectation without the recognition. Study hard. Be sensible. Don't cause problems. My older sister Diane got the praise. My younger brother Tyler got the leniency. I got the silence that sits between those two things. I was not bitter about it then. I was just invisible in the particular way middle children learn to be. By the time I was 24, I had a plan. I wanted to start a business. A small consulting firm. Nothing dramatic. Just something mine. I told my family at dinner one evening. My mother looked uncertain. My father said, "That's risky, Claire. Do you have the experience?" Diane said nothing but raised an eyebrow. Tyler was on his phone. No one said, "That sounds exciting." No one said, "I believe in you." No one said, "How can we help?" Just doubt. Quiet, well-meaning, suffocating doubt. I nodded. I said, "I've thought it through." And I went home and started anyway. The first 2 years were hard. Really hard. I worked from my apartment. I had 3 clients. Then 2. Then 4. Then 1. I called my mother once during a particularly bad month. I just needed to hear a supportive voice. She said, "Maybe it's time to think about a regular job, Claire." I said, "I just need a bit more time." She said, "I just don't want you to waste your best years on something that isn't working." I thanked her. I ended the call. I sat on my kitchen floor for 20 minutes. Then I got up and went back to work. The distance grew slowly. I stopped calling as much. They stopped asking. Family dinners became occasional. Then rare. Then non-existent. Diane got married. I was invited. I went. We were polite strangers. Tyler graduated. I sent a card. He texted thanks. That was it. My parents moved to a smaller house. I helped with 2 boxes. We had coffee. We said nothing real. By the time I was 28, the gap was so wide neither side knew how to cross it. So we didn't. We just existed separately. Them on their side. Me on mine. On my side I was building. Year 3 the business turned a corner. I got a contract that changed everything. Year 4 I hired my first employee. Year 5 I had a team of 6. Year 6 I moved into a real office. My name on the door. My team inside. My life. I had friends who became family. Colleagues who became friends. A therapist who helped me understand the grief of being unseen by the people who should have seen you first. I built a life that was full. Genuinely, quietly, completely full. And I did it without them. Not to prove something. just because I had no other choice. The magazine feature came out on a Thursday. A friend had nominated me. I had done the interview without thinking too much about it. It ran as a half-page feature. Young entrepreneur. Local success story. Built from nothing. I read it over my morning coffee and felt a quiet private pride. I sent it to 3 friends. I did not send it to my family. I did not think to. That is how separate our worlds had become. 10 days after the magazine came out, my mother called. I stared at her name on the screen for a long moment. We had not spoken in 4 months. I answered. Claire. Her voice was warm. Warmer than I remembered. Mom, I said. I saw the article, she said. Someone from the neighborhood showed me. Claire, it was wonderful. We had no idea. I sat with that for a moment. We had no idea. Because you never asked, I thought. Thank you, I said. Your father wants to call you, she said. And Diane saw it too. We're all so proud. Proud. The word landed strangely. I had not heard that word from my family in years. Maybe ever. That's kind, I said. We'd love to see you, she said. Maybe dinner? This weekend? I said I would think about it. I did not commit. I ended the call and sat very still. My father called that evening. Then Diane the next morning. Then Tyler, who had never in his adult life called me unprompted, sent a voice message saying he had seen the article and was really proud. For contacts in 48 hours. After 4 months of silence. After years of distance. After the dinner where my mother told me to get a real job. After the wedding where Diane and I were polite strangers. After all of it. Now, warmth. Pride. Dinner invitations. I did not feel angry. I felt something quieter. Tired. And very, very clear. I called my closest friend Maya that evening. Maya had known me since the first hard year of the business. She had seen me on the kitchen floor. She had brought food when I forgot to eat. She knew the whole story. I told her about the calls. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "How do you feel?" "Clear," I said. "Clear how?" she asked. "Clear like, I can see exactly what's happening," I said. "And I'm not sure I want to open a door I spent years closing." Maya was quiet. "What do you want?" she asked. It was such a simple question. I sat with it for a long time. "I want them to have called 4 years ago," I said. "I want them to have asked how the business was going. I want my mother to not have told me to get a real job when I was drowning. I want Diane to have been my sister at her own wedding instead of a stranger." "And since you can't have that?" Maya asked gently. "I don't know yet," I said. I did not call my family back that week. I let the messages sit. I went to work. I led my team. I had lunch with a colleague who was becoming a friend. I lived my life. And I thought. On the 9th day my mother called again. This time her voice was less warm. More uncertain. "Claire. We haven't heard back from you." "I know," I said. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "I've been thinking." "About dinner?" she said. "About everything," I said. A pause. "We just want to reconnect," she said. "I know," I said. Is that not something you want?" I took a breath. "Mom," I said. "Can I ask you something?" She said yes. "When was the last time you called me before the article came out?" Silence. "I know it's been a while." 4 months, I said. And before that, another 3. And before that, do you remember what you said to me when I called you in my 3rd year of business? A long pause. Claire. You told me to think about getting a real job, I said. I was drowning and I called you and that's what you said. The line was very quiet. I didn't know how bad it was, she said finally. You didn't ask, I said. After that call my mother did not contact me for 2 weeks. I think she needed time. So did I. Diane called on a Tuesday. Her voice was different from my mother's. Less warm. More direct. Claire. Mom is upset. She feels like you're punishing her. I almost laughed. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. You won't return calls. You won't come to dinner. What would you call it? Taking my time, I said. Over what? Diane said. We saw the article and reached out. That's a good thing. It is, I said. But Diane, where were you before the article? A pause. We've all been busy. So have I said. I was busy building something from nothing for 6 years. Did anyone call to ask how it was going? Silence. That's not fair, she said. Isn't it? I said. You pulled away too, she said. You stopped coming to things. Because when I came to things I felt invisible, I said. I felt like the middle child who was expected to show up and not need anything. And when I needed something, support, belief, just someone asking how things were, it wasn't there. Diane was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I didn't know you felt that way. No one asked, I said. Tyler called the following weekend. I was surprised. Tyler had never been the one to navigate family tension. He said, hey. I know things are weird right now. A little, I said. For what it's worth, he said, I think you're right to take your time. I paused. Really? I said. Yeah, he said. We all kind of just assumed you were fine. Because you always seemed fine. Because you never asked for anything. I asked once, I said. The phone call, he said. I was surprised he knew about it. Mom mentioned it, he said quietly. After your call with her. I think it hit her hard. Good, I said. Then, I don't mean that cruelly. I know, he said. 3 weeks after the first calls I met my mother for coffee. Just us. No dinner. No family gathering. No performance. Just coffee at a small place near my office. She arrived first. She looked older than I remembered. She stood when she saw me. Like she wasn't sure if we were hugging people. We were. I hugged her. We sat down. She said, I've been thinking about what you said. About the phone call. Okay, I said. I was scared for you, she said. When you started the business. I didn't know how to say that. So I said the wrong thing instead. I looked at her. Fear isn't an excuse, I said. But it is an explanation. She nodded. I should have asked more, she said. I should have called more. I assumed you were managing. You always managed. I was managing, I said. Barely. And alone. I know that now, she said. What changed? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. Seeing your face in that article, she said quietly. Seeing what you built. And realizing I had no part in it. None. You did all of that and I wasn't there. Her voice broke slightly on the last word. I sat with that. You weren't there, I said. That's true. Can I be here now? She asked. I looked at my mother across the small table. She was not a villain. She was a person who had been careless with someone who needed care. There is a difference. But the difference does not erase the years. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But I'm here for coffee. That's a start. She nodded. She accepted that. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. 2 weeks after coffee with my mother, Diane asked to meet. I said yes. We met at a restaurant near her house. Diane had always been the composed one. The put-together one. She sat across from me with the same careful posture she always had. But something was different in her eyes. Less certain than usual. She said, I've been thinking about what you said. About feeling invisible. Okay, I said. I didn't see it, she said. I genuinely didn't see it. I know, I said. But that doesn't mean it wasn't there, she said. I looked at her. That was more self-awareness than I had expected from Diane. No, I said. It doesn't. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Do you remember my wedding? Yes, I said. You were so quiet, she said. I thought you were just being you. Reserved. I was lonely, I said. I was at my sister's wedding and I felt like a guest who didn't know anyone. Diane closed her eyes briefly. I didn't know, she said. You didn't ask, I said. That's the theme, Diane. She almost smiled. Not quite. I was so focused on my own day, she said. I didn't think about what you might need. Most people don't, I said. That's not a crime. But it accumulates. What does? She asked. Being unseen, I said. Every time someone doesn't ask. Every time someone assumes you're fine. Every time you show up and no one wonders what it cost you to be there. Diane looked at me for a long moment. I'm sorry, Claire, she said. I'm genuinely sorry. It was the first time Diane had apologized to me for anything. In our entire lives. I sat with it. Thank you, I said. That matters. We stayed at that restaurant for 3 hours. We talked about things we had never talked about. What it was like being the oldest. The pressure she had felt. What it was like being the middle. The invisibility I had learned. What it was like for Tyler, the youngest, who had coasted on leniency and then felt directionless for years. 3 people who had grown up in the same house and barely knew each other. That was the real loss. Not the dinners I hadn't attended. Not the calls that hadn't happened. The fact that we had been raised together and had never really met. At the end, Diane said, What do you need from us? Going forward. I thought about it carefully. Consistency, I said. Not grand gestures. Just call sometimes. Ask how things are. Be interested in my life, not just my achievements. That's fair, she said. And if I need space, I said, don't interpret that as punishment. Sometimes I just need to be in my own world. Okay, she said. And don't show up because of an article, I said. Show up because you want to know your sister. Diane nodded. I want to know my sister, she said quietly. I looked at her across the table. Composed Diane. Put together Diane. Sitting across from me with something that looked remarkably like humility. Then let's start there, I said. My father and I had our conversation last. He was the quietest of all of them. He called one evening and simply said, I should have backed you from the beginning. I said the wrong things. I'm sorry. 10 seconds. No elaboration. My father had never in his life said sorry to me. I sat in the quiet of that for a moment. Thank you, Dad, I said. Are you happy? He asked. It was the most direct question he had ever asked me. Yes, I said. I really am. Good, he said. That's all I want. We talked for 30 minutes after that. Simple things. Easy things. But real. Things are different now. Not repaired overnight. Not magically the family I always wished for. Different. Carefully, slowly, honestly different. My mother calls every 2 weeks. Real calls. Not check-ins. She asks about the business. About my team. About what I'm working on. She is learning to be interested in my life, not just my milestones. It is new for her. I can see the effort. I appreciate the effort. Diane and I have lunch once a month. We are learning each other. Slowly. Carefully. Like two people who were introduced late and are making up for lost time. She told me last month about a struggle in her marriage. Something she would never have told me before. I listened. I did not offer solutions. I just listened. Afterward she said, I've never told anyone that. I'm glad you told me, I said. She smiled. And for the first time in my life, I felt like Diane's sister. Not her obligation. Not her background character. Her sister. Tyler calls occasionally. Not often. But when he does, it's real. He is figuring out his own life. Slowly. In his own way. I don't give advice unless he asks. I just show up. The way I wished people had shown up for me. My father and I have Sunday calls now. 30 minutes. Every week without fail. He tells me about his garden. I tell him about my week. Simple. Consistent. Quietly precious. The business continues to grow. Last quarter was the best we have ever had. I have a team of 11 now. I am expanding to a second office next year. I did not need my family's belief to build this. But I will not pretend it doesn't feel different, doing well with people in my corner. Even late. Even imperfectly. Having them there feels different. I think about the years of distance sometimes. Not with bitterness. Not anymore. More like understanding. We were a family that did not know how to see each other. That is not cruelty. That is blindness. And blindness can be corrected. If someone is willing to name what they cannot see. I named it. It cost me something to name it. But it changed things. 6 months ago, I was at a family dinner. A real one. Not an obligation. Not a performance. My mother made food. My father sat at the head of the table. Diane brought wine. Tyler was late, but he came. At one point my mother raised a glass. She said, to Claire. Who built something incredible. And who waited for us to catch up. I looked around the table. At my family. Imperfect. Late. Trying. I raised my glass. To catching up, I said. And I meant it. If your family has ever made you feel invisible, if they noticed you only when you succeeded, hear this. You did not imagine it. Being unseen by the people who were supposed to see you first, that is a real loss. You are allowed to grieve it. You are allowed to build your life without waiting for their belief. You are allowed to close a door when closing it is the only way to know if anyone will knock. And if they knock, you get to decide whether to open it. Not immediately. Not on their timeline. On yours. Because the life you built while they were absent, that life is yours. It does not belong to them. It does not require their approval. It was built in silence and struggle, and it is yours completely. Let them in if you choose to. On your terms. In your time. And never apologize for the years you spent building without them. Those years made you exactly who you are. And who you are is more than enough.